All right, let's dive into one of the biggest questions out there. I mean, this is something that really shapes, well, everything. From the phone you're probably holding right now to the entire global balance of power.
I mean, really think about it for a second. Our world is so incredibly connected, right? We have global supply chains. You can talk to someone on the other side of the planet instantly. So why? Why is there still this massive, massive gap between rich countries and poor countries? It feels like it never changes. What's the deal?
Well, that exact puzzle is what the Egyptian economist Samir Amin spent his entire life trying to solve. He looked at all the usual explanations and thought, nope, that's not it. He was convinced everyone was missing something huge, something baked into the very structure of the global system. And to figure it out, he went back to the basics, or at least back to one of the biggest names in capitalism, Karl Marx. But here's the thing, he didn't just copy and paste Marx's ideas.
This quote from Amin says it all. He's saying, look, I'm not here to worship Marx, I'm here to use his tools. He saw Marx's ideas as a powerful starting point, a way to analyze a truly globalized world that, let's be honest, Marx never could have imagined.
So, Amin thought Marx absolutely nailed the analysis of capitalism inside a single country. Like, he wrote the book on it. But Amin argued that was just one chapter. There was a whole missing chapter on how this system works on a global stage, especially when you look at the relationship between rich and poor nations. And that's the chapter Amin decided to write himself.
Okay, so before we can get to Amin's big update, we have to quickly get our heads around the original idea he was building on, and that's the classical law of value. So what is it? Well, in a nutshell, it's the idea that a thing's real economic value isn't just its price tag. It's determined by all the human labor that went into making it. We're talking about the person on the assembly line, sure, but also the person who built the robot for the assembly line, the person who mined the metal, all of it. It's why a car is worth more than a t-shirt, right? Just way more hours of human work involved. That was the foundation.
Okay, foundation laid. Now here comes Amin's big move. He says, that's a great idea, but it's too small. In today's world, you can't just think about value nationally. You have to think about it globally.
And this is the core of his argument. He said the most important dynamic isn't just about bosses versus workers within France or the US anymore. The real game, on a global scale, is the unequal relationship between what he called the center, that's the rich industrialized countries, and the periphery, the developing, lower-wage nations. And to explain how this works, he came up with the law of worldwide value.
All right, so if you have this unequal system, this center and periphery, what makes it go? What's the engine? Amin had a very specific and pretty provocative name for it.
He called it imperialist rent. And this, right here, is the absolute guts of his entire theory. Now, we're not talking about paying rent on your apartment. Think of it more like a massive hidden transfer of value. It's all the extra profit that corporations in the center get to pocket. Not because they're more productive, but simply because they can pay workers in the periphery so much less.
Okay, let me break it down. This is the perfect example. Imagine two factories are making the exact same smartphone. Same tech, same process, everything. One factory is in Germany, the other is in Vietnam. The workers are equally productive, but the German worker makes, say, 25 euros an hour. The Vietnamese worker makes 3. Now, both phones sell for 1,000 euros. So, where did that extra 22 euros an hour from the Vietnamese labor go? It didn't make the phone cheaper for us, right? And it sure didn't go to the worker in Vietnam. Nope, it got sucked up by the corporation's headquarters back in the center. That massive difference, that's imperialist rent.
So you might think, okay, that's unfair to the workers in the periphery. And it is. But Amin's point is that this system creates a huge, shaky problem for the entire global economy. It's fundamentally unstable. See, for a capitalist system to be healthy, there's a kind of unwritten rule. As people get more productive, their wages need to go up too. Why? Because somebody has to buy all the stuff being made. If workers are making more things but not getting paid more, who's going to buy it all? It's about keeping the whole economic machine from grinding to a halt.
And right there, you have the central paradox. The whole point of imperialist rent is to keep wages down in the periphery to maximize profit. But if you keep wages down for a huge chunk of the world's population, while productivity is skyrocketing, you're creating a mountain of stuff with not enough people who can actually afford to buy it. So what gives?
Well, according to Amin, the system has to get creative to deal with all this extra cash and unsold stuff. So where does it go? First, you see the explosion of what he called unproductive sectors. Think about finance, marketing, advertising. They don't actually make anything new, but they are great at absorbing mountains of surplus cash. Another escape valve is massive state spending. The government, military, and civil steps in to become a consumer of last resort. But even with all these workarounds, the system is always teetering on the edge of a crisis, the crisis of overproduction.
So let's pull all this together. When you look at the world through Amin's lens, you get a very different and, honestly, a very challenging picture of how things work.
And here's the bottom line. The biggest takeaway from Amin's work is this. Global inequality isn't an accident. It's not a bug in the system that we can fix with a patch. He argues it's a feature. It's the system working exactly as it was designed to, based on this worldwide law of value, and the constant extraction of imperialist rent.
And that leaves us with a huge, lingering question, doesn't it? If Amin's analysis is right, then just tinkering around the edges with things like foreign aid isn't going to cut it. It suggests we'd need to completely rethink the fundamental rules of the global economy. His work really pushes us to ask, what would a truly fair global system even look like?